I've been a practitioner for 50 years of Raja Yoga. I was taught by an adept, an Indian adept, on a one-to-one basis many, many years ago in London. And I had a lot of difficulty in understanding it. First of all, because of the terminology. Secondly, he didn't speak much English, so the transmission was more by action rather than word. And over the years I've looked at, I'm also Buddhist, I've looked at Tibetan Buddhist teachings and yoga, and there are many, many approaches. But what we are teaching, or what I am teaching here, is basically the essence of all of them, because there's a fundamental thread running through the lot, right? So and for me, the whole thing is about something that's simple for people to do in normal lives, where you've got a job or you've got a family or whatever it is, that you can fit it in. You don't have to go off to the mountains or anything like that, and that it's practical, but you gain the same benefits, or I think greater benefits, because it's about the understanding of it. And if it is that 90% of the effort is just trying to understand what's being said, that leaves only 10% to actually take in what is trying to be transmitted. And there are so many different, the terminology varies. For example, in Tibetan Buddhism they use certain words. Within yoga they use certain words. Within Western religion they use certain words, but they're the same. There's no difference, it's just different words for the same thing. And so what we do here is to try to reconcile them all so that we can get a benefit from it in our lives, because at the end of the day, the whole thing to do with practice is, the practice is what it is. It's a technique, it's a practice, it's something that takes you to a destination, but in itself has no value. Once you have acquired what the technique is trying to show you, it no longer has a value. Many people get hung up on the technique, and they think that that is the means to an end, but it's not. The technique is just there to show you the way. So then we have to say to ourselves, well, why are we doing it? What's the reason that we're doing our practice? And of course, the reason, the fundamental and ultimate reason that we're doing the practice is because we're seeking enlightenment. We're seeking the truth. We're seeking tranquility, whatever you want to call it. We are seeking a better life. The ultimate motivation is enlightenment, but we may take a lower motivation, and we may say, well, look, I just want to relax. I mean, I don't have that great aspiration at the moment to become enlightened. I just want to gain benefit, whatever that benefit is. But the main thing is that we need to know why we're doing it, that the goal is to feel better, right? No matter what practice, there are certain key elements that have to be in place for any practice to work. Now, part of it is the philosophy. The philosophy is important because our motivation in how we run our lives, how we react to things, is important. That we have a positive spin on life, that we see things in a way that is mentally healthy. Let's put it that way. So the philosophy and understanding ourselves and understanding our relationship to others, not the way we think we are, but the way we actually are, is important. And it's not that easy to get one's head around it, because I can tell you, or you can read books, and they will tell you all sorts of philosophical arguments And at a logical basis, we can take it on and say, yeah, it's logical, it makes sense. But we have to draw that philosophy into our lives, because if it's just at a logical level, it's kind of skirting around the top of our heads, but we're not living it. We understand it, but we're not living it. We have to experience it. And that is where the practice comes in. So in order to, if you, for example, read Patanjali or any other of the great yogic or Buddhist philosophies are not understandable other than being able to enter them. So you've got two aspects. You've got what's being said and learning the practice to enable you to understand what's being said. Right? So we could have a great philosophical conversation, and Buddhism is full of it. And so is the yogic path, full of it. But it's not actually taking anyone anywhere, because at the end of the day, it's an experiential thing. So where does the practice come in? Now, there are in essence two ways of doing the practice. There's the practice with pranayama, which is breath control or energy control. I'm doing this just in case somebody comes in, because you're going to do the sun salutations in a minute, right? So I'm just going through the sequence here. So you've got either with breath control, with pranayama, or without. Does anyone know what pranayama is? Have you heard of it? Breath control? No? Yes? Yes? Right. Breath control, it's not actually breath, it's energy control. Prana is about boosting our energy levels. In our normal way of living, our energy levels become very, very suppressed. Pranayama is a way of energizing ourselves to a much, much higher degree, which does have a profound effect on our practice. If it is that one wants to progress fast on the path, one requires pranayama of one sort or another. If one wants to take a more pedestrian position with it, then just meditation. So it's an individual thing. Now, then meditation. What is meditation? Meditation is a method of, if you like, getting to a point of deep relaxation. Right? And I'll go into this in more detail in a minute. So that we are able to observe ourselves rather than just reacting to what's going on and getting highly emotional all the time about everything. It is a way of placing, it's purely a practice, and it's very simple, of placing a space in our minds, in our consciousness, so that we are able to examine what the hell we're doing. Because otherwise, if we don't create that space, we're like mice on a treadmill all the time. In Buddhism, it's called monkey mind. We're just going off in all sorts of emotional directions. Our emotions are running us. So this is saying, hey, wait a minute, what am I doing here? That's what meditation essentially does. And then we finish it off with Yoga Nidra. Anyone not know what Yoga Nidra is? You don't. Yoga Nidra is a deep relaxation, right, at the end. So in other words, where meditation, where the whole practice takes you, is to a space that is one would call samadhi, which is it's a space of silence. And that is the space that is the object of the whole practice, is to get into that space. Now, when we're in that space, that's when we can use the philosophy. So we draw the philosophy, what we've learned, into that space and examine it from there. And then we start getting the answers. So that's basically what it is about. It is so that we understand ourselves better. We understand that we're all the same, everybody wants the same thing, and we are able to have a more contented life. That's what we want. So we're going to start off with sun salutations. Does everyone know what sun salutations are? Anybody not? Right. Julian will take us through. What are you going to do? 3 to the left and 3 to the right?
Probably 2 and 2.
2 to the left, 2 to the right. Okay. You should always, ideally, with a practice, you should at a minimum do sun salutations or a small group of asanas that basically give you a balanced practice. Okay? And if you want more information, there are some books by a teacher, American teacher called Yogani, which is very good background reading for this practice. It's consistent with the practice that I teach, and you will find it very, very helpful. And he does very small books dealing with these different matters. Anyway, let's get on with this.
Okay, so we're just going to do a couple of sun salutations just to relax and get in the mood. So, come to the front of your mat, feet together, arms by your side, shoulders back, tailbone tucked in. Okay, so we're going to breathe in and bring the arms up. Lower the arms, fall down, breathe out. Breathe in, look up. Right foot back. Other side of left foot. Slowly down, elbows tucked in. Up into cobra. Down. Down dog. Take 2 good breaths here. Stepping forward with the right foot, followed by the left, hang down. As you come up, breathe in. And down. Okay, other side, breathe in. Look up. Left foot back. Followed by the right. Down straight. Up into cobra. Into down dog. A couple of breaths here. Stepping forward with the left foot, followed by the right, hang down, and as you come up, breathe in, and down. Okay, again, concentrate on the breathing, in, look up, in, right foot back, by the left, foot. Over that. Hang down. Breathe in. Left foot, right, fingers spread, elbows in, down, over, down. Down we go. Stepping forward with the left foot. Other side of the right. And down. And up. And down. Okay. Thank you.
Thanks, Julian. Please sit down comfortably. The key to the whole thing is always to be comfortable, because the object of the exercise is to be drawn away from our body, our feelings, our senses. Pratyahara, the idea of that is internalizing the senses so that we are all mind. And if we have pain or whatever through the way we're sitting or whatever, it makes it harder. So the most important thing is that we feel comfortable. The next important thing is that whatever practice we're going to do, whether it's this or any other, we do daily. Now, in a way, this is the hardest part for many people, because people like to think that, well, I'll do it occasionally and I'll feel better and that's it. But it doesn't work like that. In the same way as with the asanas, they should be done regularly. This, particularly meditation and pranayama, should be done on a daily basis. That doesn't mean that one should be fanatical about it. So if one misses a day because one's travelling or something happens, doesn't matter. It's not a thing where you have to do double the amount the following day, but it is important not to get into the habit of not doing it, because that's just another bad habit. So it's also not a case that any teacher, no matter who it is, Yogananda, Swami Rama, the Dalai Lama, doesn't matter who it is, it's you that does the work. They don't do it for you. None of this business of, oh, we'll touch him there and all of a sudden, no. That does work in a certain circumstance, but we get out what we put in. It's like, we want to play tennis like Nadal? Right, we need the physical attributes, we need the mental attributes, and we need to practice every day. Same thing. It's like any art. Whatever we want to be good at, we have to put the commitment into this as well. So it needs to be done on a daily basis. The practice here is something that you can do in 15-20 minutes a day, ideally twice a day, in the morning and in the evening, late early evening, 7ish, 6ish, 5ish or whatever. We need to find a space that's quiet, that's our space, where we feel relaxed, where we're not invaded, it's our time, something we need to enjoy. The practice itself, which I'll go through with you in a bit, is not complicated at all. No practice is complicated. The most, if you like, challenging part is actually the pranayama. Only, it's not that that in itself is complicated, but it's subtle, and it takes a while until we get into the flow. So it's always, we get benefit from the beginning. But if I was to say to you, right, you do this, 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 and this mentally, we can't get around all the aspects of it. So we have to build it up. Like with the asanas, you have to build up the pranayama practice over time. And if we try to put too much of it together all at one time, it'll all fall apart and you have to rebuild the practice. So it's better to take it very, very slowly and take one little bit, or maybe two, at a time. Let them, because it's about building up habits. That's what they are. So, and you can only build one habit on top of another habit on top of another habit. So when they become routine, you can then move forward and you build it up, like you build a house. But you can't put it all together at one time. Whereas meditation is very simple. The practice, again, it takes time to get the benefit, but it's simple. Now, I'm going to talk about something that we all suffer from: stress. Now, why are we sitting here in a yoga class talking about stress? Because stress is the key. That is what is preventing us from becoming enlightened, in essence. Stress. Why stress? What is the cause of stress? The cause of stress is our relationship between now and the past and now and the future. There is no stress in the here and now. If we live purely now, and not by virtue of the past or the future, there is no stress. But if we live in relation to what could have been, should have been, regrets, all this sort of stuff, right? That in itself is stress. And the bigger our relationship with that particular item that is coming through our minds of regret or whatever, the greater the stress. So it's a relative thing. The more, it's only what it means to you. It's nothing to do with anybody else. So what is a stressful issue for one person means nothing to anybody else. But for them, it's another thing. So stress is just, it's a vibration, if you like. It's a vibrational thing. And so, but we all suffer from it. And in relation to the future, as to what we would like to happen. So we are constantly going between attraction and repulsion, and that's what stress is. The practice is about reducing that habit, because that's what it is, that we build up, of attraction and repulsion. I like this, I don't like this, da, 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 da. This is how our minds are going, all day. And we need to slow the mind down. And we need to realise that they are just thoughts. We're actually in this moment. They're just thoughts. Because if we look at it logically, and again, I said before, we have to take this on board, and this is where meditation comes in, is the past has happened. So what's the point in worrying about it? If it is that we've learnt from it, that's it. We've learnt and we move on. But to keep going back and beating ourselves up, as many of us do in our lives, because we've either done bad shit or whatever it is that's happened, it's happened. So all we can do is learn from it and try not to repeat it. And if we do repeat it, try not to do it again. It's not the Catholic way of, oh, you've done something bad, you're going to be punished. No. We are our own judges. We don't need anybody else to tell us we've been bad. We know. Our conscience tells us that. Similarly with the future. Whatever we think the future is going to be, it's going to be different. It's whether it's better or worse, it's just going to be different. So what we need to do is have a more relaxed way of moving into the future, because the future is not here now. We don't know what the future is going to be. We may want it to be a certain way, but maybe it will, maybe it won't. We don't know. That's why it's called the future. And the more the more we invest in those thoughts, the more stress we have. So the practice is about bringing us into the here and now. There isn't any stress there. When you meditate, what we're trying to learn here is what is the feeling of the here and now, as opposed to the feeling of all those stressful thoughts that we have all the time, because they are habits that we've acquired throughout our life from when we were very, very young. Now, there is this idea, and I think, from my own experience, I think it's true. We are born enlightened at the moment of our birth, but from then on, it's strictly downhill in terms of becoming attached to different concepts. Our parents, who mean well with us, they are teaching us, our friends, our siblings, our schools, they're all showing us what historically has been shown, which everybody thinks is in our best interest, but is all from their perspective and unchallenged. And the earlier we learn that, up to 7 years old, 5 years old, the harder it is to unravel, because at that age we do not have the ability to question it. We just accept it. These are concepts. So if we come from, say, a background that had some difficulties associated with it, troubled childhoods, very young, we can't really get back and figure out why we're all messed up so easily. But meditation takes the position, and the practice takes the position, it doesn't matter why. This is a practice that no matter what reason we have, it will help us, because it just starts releasing that pressure. So it doesn't matter whether one has this problem or one has that problem. Everybody is the same. In Buddhism, the whole thing is about and this is the great thing about Buddhist practice, is that the Buddha, who didn't discover anything, all he did, because it's innate in humanity, all he did was reach certain realizations and explain them. And he said that we all suffer. That is the common denominator of human beings. We all suffer. It doesn't matter what we suffer about, we just suffer. But there is something we can do about it. And this is what we do. And so that's the path. So it is a path. So, getting back to stress, the effect of it is that it's very damaging over a long term for our health, mentally and physically. Because whatever we think manifests in our body. So it's very, very important how we use our minds. Every thought has a certain vibration attached to it. That vibration is translated into a chemical signal that goes through our body. Now, having one bad thought doesn't matter, but as we get older, these become what in Buddhism is called habitual tendencies. They become habits. And over time, they erode us. It's like we're walking through life and we've got a bag, it starts off as a small bag on our back, and it's got a few pebbles in it. And as we move on through life, it gets heavier and heavier and heavier, and bigger and bigger, until we get to old age and we're absolutely bowled over by it, mentally and physically. We're done in by the problems of life. So we don't want to get to that. It's a matter of trying to live one's life mentally and physically in a better way. This is how karma acts on us. Where, people, we talked about karma the other week. we have, in the practice, the first thing that happens is that our future karma, or present karma if you like, present karma which becomes the future, becomes better insofar as our motivation becomes more positive. So we start thinking about things in a better way, not for the other person but for us, so that we feel better about it. And that is not that difficult. You do the meditation practice, and the meditation practice reduces the grasping. That's what causes it, the grasping. But there's the past karma, and that past karma is what we come into this world with, right? And what we have experienced up to this moment. So in the same way as we will inherit certain physical characteristics of our parents, we also inherit certain mental traits of our parents in our DNA, right? So that's the karma we're born with. We then add to that as we go through life. And that manifests itself over time through our bodies. So we become in the form of stress, and the stress starts affecting our muscles, starts affecting all aspects of our bodies, which is why the asanas are very good, why pranayama is very good. It is causing a constant, because when we react in a certain way, boom, we have a thought, we close down. It's a clenching within our bodies. So we say, okay, well look, I'm going to relax. Yeah, you relax, but that's just a relative tiny relax compared with the actual relax that is available to us. What does relaxing mean? Relaxing really means that we are physically completely relaxed. In other words, our muscles, our blood vessels, our nervous system, our lymphatic system, our organs are all relaxed. Now, if we actually look at what we're doing, we may find that we clench our jaws. I'm not suggesting you're all doing that now or any other time, but there is a tendency. Our tongues go to the bottom of our mouths. Our shoulders are tight. Our necks are tight. Now that's all stress, but that is accumulated stress. And that in a way, the asanas help, pranayama helps, but you have to slowly break that down, mentally and physically. But it comes from the mind. So we have to become sufficiently relaxed and do asanas to be able to break this whole cycle down so that we feel better. And that's what it's really about. Stress, I'm just going to say a little bit more about stress because it is such an important thing, is our relationship with the past, our stress related to past events, is what actually causes depression. We're depressed because something has happened and we're dwelling on this sort of thing. And anxiety is about future events that have not yet occurred. So when someone is both depressed and anxious, it's because they're just worried about everything. Right? There is a relationship. Depression is a very specific thing, and anxiety is a very specific thing. They relate to the past and the future. Now, the opposite of stress is not unstress, it is silence. Because stress is a dualistic state of mind. It's me and other. There's always another there for there to be stress. Not necessarily a person, it can be an object, it can be a concept. But it is not an internalized thing, it is external. It's how It's our view, our reaction to something external. So there is that me and other thing going on. And the practice is about stopping that. Enlightenment, samadhi, let's talk about first of all. Samadhi is the space where that is not going on. There is no other. It is just me in this moment. And when we do the Yoga Nidra, that space that hopefully you will end up with is that space where there is no other. You're just in a space of silence. Right? That space, it's like the roof has come off your house. Your skull has opened up and there are no barriers. There's no me or other. It's just now. Right? And that is, in a way, the opposite of stress, because you've got stress, which is a dualistic concept that can only exist between now and the past and now and the future. And then you've got that space of silence, samadhi, grace, whatever you want to call it. It's all the same thing and all the different, but it all amounts to which is a vibration. That's all it is. It's a vibration by different names in different traditions. And that space where there is no other. And those are the only two spaces that there are. You can look at all sorts of analyses, and in yoga and in Buddhism, they're great at breaking all these things down and philosophizing. But at the end of the day, that's all there is. There's a dualistic aspect of mind, and there isn't. That's it. So all the practices take you into experiencing that space for longer and longer and more and more. Enlightenment is just samadhi in perpetuity. In other words, it's not like you sit down, you practice, you get into samadhi, you then go back, look after the kids, you're out of samadhi, all of it. It doesn't work like that. Enlightenment is purely samadhi permanently, right? And you say, oh well, how can I do that? I lie there doing yoga nidra, how can I actually live my life in that space all of the time? Well, that brings us to something else, which is meditation in action, which I'm going to get into in a moment. So, what I'm saying to you is that stress is voluntary. We all, by voluntary, I mean that given the means, which is what a practice is, that enables us to reduce our stress levels so we can do something about it. It's not a given. Everybody's stressed, yeah, everybody's stressed, except if you are high up in your practice, then you're not, or less, or whatever. It's attainable for everybody and with very little investment in time or effort. Now, another aspect of this, and this is what happens in meditation, is we learn to let go, relax. Now relax, we hear, in religion they call it surrender. Now surrender, yeah, it's lovely, it sounds, yeah, it's a good word and it describes the same thing, and it makes one somehow got this picture that you go into church and you kind of surrender. But it's not that. It is actually letting go. Just relax. And that is what the practice is. It is about relaxing. And not just, oh well, I've had a hard day, have a cup of tea, relax. It's deep, deep relaxation, a process. That is what we are trying to do all of the time, letting go. When you bring your attention to your shoulders, let's say, you close your eyes and you bring your attention to your shoulders, and you really bring your attention to your shoulders, and you say, let go. You will feel, and you do it on the out breath, because letting go is always done on the out-breath. The in-breath is energizing, the out-breath is relaxing, is surrendering, letting go, right? And that's what we have to do. It's not that complicated, but it is important. And the philosophy teaches us about our what we think, what we do, and what we say. The three jewels in Buddhism. Body, speech, and mind. We look at what we're thinking, or what we're saying, or what we're doing, and have a good motivation as to why we're doing it. That's the key. So the practice enables us to do those things. Now, let's just talk about what I was saying before, about meditation. Does anyone know what meditation in action is? Is there anyone here that doesn't meditate, has not had a meditation practice of any sort? Oh, great. Meditation in action is just carrying on that practice in one's daily life, right? So that it's what we have to come to is that we're not just practicing it like now or for 20 minutes in the afternoons or in the mornings, but our whole life is a meditation. So we walk down the street and we start getting all sorts of stuff going on in our heads. We come back to the mantra, in which I will teach you. We come back to the mantra, and it's meditation in action is about it is bringing the practice into our daily lives, because that's what's important. It's not about sitting there in some theoretical exercise. It's about making us feel better and living it. So we have to bring it in there. And I'm going to go through the whole thing in a moment about the meditation and the way we do the pranayama. And then I will explain that probably in a bit more detail. Are there any questions up to now? There should be. No? No? That's very disappointing. You must be all genius. I don't know why you're here. Right. Now, the next thing I'm going to talk about just a little bit is the pranayama. Because pranayama is probably less understood. It's very warm in here. It's still less understood than say meditation, and certainly less than asanas. Now prana, what is prana? Prana is energy, essentially. It is life force, chi. In Tibetan it's lung. It is purely the energy. We think of energy in terms of food, gives us energy. But in fact, our breath carries prana. It's not prana itself. Prana rides on the breath. It comes out of that source and it permeates its way through us. Pranayama is a dynamic way of breathing that enhances that effect and forces that energy, concentrates the energy and forces it through us. Have any of you got any? Has anybody not had any practice with pranayama? Is there anybody here that does not know anything about it? Or do I need to start from the beginning? Does everyone know what Kundalini is? Anyone not? Great. Everyone knows how the chakras work? Excellent. Okay, let me explain to you then, if you all know the basics of it, I will explain to you this particular way of doing pranayama that we use. Now the way that we do the pranayama is, it's very simple. if you look at many of the books, there's hundreds of different types of kriyas that you can do. This is the object of the exercise, is to raise Kundalini. It doesn't really matter which kriyas you use to do that, so long as it is raised in a safe way. What does that mean? Every chakra has a vibration attached to it. Every chakra is in the nervous system terms, is a plexus. And the chakras are around the plexuses, which are, if you like, junction points of the nervous system. And they operate at ever increasing vibrations going up. The three below the waist are physical, the three above are mental, are non-physical. And the object is to increase the potency of the prana and direct it to the central channel and make it rise. But in this practice, we only bring it to the 6th chakra. Okay? And the way we do this is we bring our attention to the base of our spine. As we breathe in, we imagine an ember or a light or whatever it is at the base of our spine. We breathe in, we raise that ember as we breathe slowly up to the back of our head and forward to the 6th chakra. And then we reverse it. We breathe out, but we breathe out in a controlled way. The in-breath you develop it as a cycle, like this, but there is a start and a stop to the breath, and on the in and the out. So, always start, breathe out, breathe in, so it's not like, it's and stop, and then start again, and you keep, and the ember goes up and down, okay? So it's very important that you bring your attention, keep it maintained on the ember, or whatever, ball of light, or whatever, and it's rising from the base of one's spine. So as we breathe, we lose the association of the breath with the lungs. It is purely from the base of one's spine up to the 6th chakra. Now, as far as the actual technique of the breath is concerned, it is important, and again, I'm giving you this, and you put it together, maybe some of you are already doing it, but for those that are not, it is important that one's floating ribs come out. So how do you do that? If you have to take a full breath. So if you breathe in fully to the abdomen, you can't breathe, you can't open here. So you put a certain amount, a slight bit of restriction on the breath at this point, and it will open up the lungs. And what are we doing? The diaphragm is opening. That's what we're trying to do. We need the diaphragm open because it changes the pressure between the upper and lower parts of the body. Right? And we draw the breath up to high, to our shoulders. Now, when I say draw the breath up, I mean draw it up this way rather than force it up from below. So it should be without force. It should be like we're just drawing the breath up. Okay? Any questions?
Sorry, to use that diaphragm, is it possible to use the bandhas?
The bandhas? It is, but the bandhas come afterwards. You see, I don't recommend that you can't learn everything together. The most important thing is to get the technique of the actual way of breathing and the movement of the light up and down, which energizes it. The light doesn't mean anything. What it actually is doing is your mind, by focusing on your spinal cord, is activating it. That's what's happening. Because wherever we bring our mind is where the action is. Always. Whether it's physically or mentally. That's why it's so important how we use our minds. So the bandhas we learn afterwards. Right? The bandhas, you can say, if you bring, for example, your abdomen in, your ribs will come out. So by just keeping control of it, it's not the bandha, but it is on its way. Because on the out breath, right, you can, as you're breathing out, you can, as you get to about this point, you can actually bring your abdomen in. And you're starting moving towards the bandha. The bandhas are also a flow, but you need to be really firmly based with the basic practice, and then afterwards do the bandhas. And the mudras. Any questions?
Sorry, may I?
Yeah, go.
And is, when you said using the mind,
Yeah.
is it like a visualizing it, like
Yeah.
light going up and down? That might help
Yeah.
as well.
It is a visualization. So what we do, remember this, and this is why it's very important that a practice is balanced, because a pranayama practice particularly enhances it. It's like spicing up significantly the practice. That it has an advantage and a disadvantage. The advantage is that we are really empowering our minds. The disadvantage is that if we use it wrongly, it is significantly negative, which is why it's important to understand the philosophy. So if it is, for example, that we are bringing our attention through pranayama, and we are continuing to focus on a lot of negative stuff, it enhances the negativity in the same way as it. So what it will do is it boosts the energetic aspect, but it doesn't direct it one way or the other. That's for you to do. And that's why it's important to learn the philosophy and understand how to use one's mind. Because what we do not understand as well as perhaps we should is that wherever we direct our minds is where the action is. Whether it's a philosophy or whether it's something physical, if we think about, if our world has a real negative spin on it, what are we doing? We are directing negativity towards us. Right? Now I can say this again, this is why it's important to get into to really understand. It's not only understand, it's feel it. And that's what the practice is, it's about feeling it. So whatever we do with our minds is hugely important, how we use it. So the first thing is, where am I going to direct it? And then the second thing is, how am I going to direct it? Because we can have the where and use that in a negative way. But because we've been doing pranayama extensively and meditating for a long time, the negativity is amplified. Right? That's what black witchcraft is. It's people that have the power, but they're misusing it for whatever reason. So it's the actual energetic aspect is non-denominational. It's for us to use it in the right way, and that's why The practice needs to be built up slowly. And regarding pranayama, by bringing it up to the 6th chakra and stopping, it's a safe way of doing it. In the old days, pranayama would never be taught other than to people who had a reasonably good background, because it's not unsafe, but it can be misused, right? And if you misuse it, you can have a problem with it, like with anything else that you misuse. So this practice that I'm teaching is one where safety is the key. You don't overdo it. You do it just to the 6th chakra. If you have any health issues, particularly to do with the heart, you take it really easy or not do pranayama. If you feel over-energized, you just slow down or stop for a minute or two. If it is that the over-energizing occurs for a long period of time, then you really need to cut back on your practice because you're overdoing it. That doesn't mean one should abandon it. It just means one should cut it back a bit and get it in balance, because that's something that we have to figure out for ourselves. We need to do enough of it to get us moving, but not too much that gets us disturbed. So we should always feel good on it. We shouldn't feel over-energized, anxious, or anything like that. We should always keep it at a nice level, and that's something only we ourselves can do. This practice, I teach it the initially 5 minutes and maximum 10 minutes. You should not need to do pranayama for more than 10 minutes. I don't think it's even healthy to do it, because if you're doing, what's most important is the technique. That is the key. That's where the dynamism is. It's not about doing 2 hours of it, or whether instead of doing 5 minutes or 10 minutes, you do 20 minutes, and it'll be twice as good. It doesn't work like that. What's more important is that you really get the flow and the technique of it. And it's not a quantity thing, it's a quality thing. All right? Everybody all right with that? You're looking puzzled.
Yeah.
Are you all right with it?
Yes.
Yeah? Okay. Now, let's talk about meditation. Now, there are many meditation techniques, but a meditation technique, they're all fundamentally the same. And what is it that we're trying to achieve in meditation? We are trying to create a space between our thoughts. Now, let me give you an analogy. Imagine the sky. The sky full of clouds. Never seen it any other way, just clouds. Clouds are always moving, always looking different, and from different geographical points, they're all different. All of a sudden, one day, a little space opens up between some clouds, and we see some light coming through. It's the sun. Very slowly, the clouds start parting, and we see the sun. And the thing about the sun is that everybody sees it the same way. Clouds, they vary. The sun is the same. Now, the meditation practice is about seeing the sun. It's opening up, the practice is about opening up those clouds and looking at the sun. That's all it is. Nothing more. So how do we do that? we deflect the mind. The first thing is, now you're all practitioners, so you probably don't have this problem, but for most people, throughout their lives, they've been going from thought to thought to thought to thought, repulsion, attraction to different things all the time. They don't know that there's anything else. That's life. You could be sitting in a chair all day, and at the end of the day, you feel knackered because of all this stuff that's been going on. It's not a physical thing, it's a mental thing. And to us, that's who we are, and that's our lives. Now, meditation is about creating that space, questioning that whole thing about who we are. Now, when that space opens up, we realize that because I am observing my thoughts, I cannot be my thoughts, because otherwise who's the observer? Right? If I am my thoughts, then who is observing those thoughts? Who's observing me thinking? So I can't be that. I have to be something else. Now that is a huge revelation, and that is where meditation takes one. To the point where we realize that we are not our thoughts. We are something else. Who are we? That's where the philosophy comes in. We're opening up the space to figure out who we are. So, bit by bit, through whatever practice one chooses to use in meditation, because all it is a tool, it opens up that space so that there's more and more sun and less cloud. And this is a progressive thing to do with our practice. Now, I teach it with a mantra, a very simple 2-syllable mantra, I am. Could be soham. There's nothing terribly different about it. I am is just the one, it needs a n component to it. I am does not mean I am, it's the syllables, it's the sound. But it needs an n component to it, om. Why? Alright, let me explain to you the practice. It's all done through abdominal breathing, not chest. So, we bring our attention to I am. I am, internally. And then our minds goof off. Did I leave the kettle on? Shall I let the dogs out for a pee? All that sort of stuff. When that happens, we say mentally, thinking, and come back to I am. I am. I am. Goes off again, thinking, come back. That's all there is to it. It's very simple. Now what is it doing? The I am space, which is a repetitive space, is the samadhi space. But we can't maintain it because we do not have the control initially to be able to do that. But the mantra is constantly bringing us back into that space. Now why the mantra and not the breath? Because some people say, well, you do it through the breath, or you can do it as a walking. There are many, many ways of doing it that all amount to the same thing. The reason that I prefer mantra as opposed to, let's say, breath is physical. So breath is associated with the body, and we don't want to be associated with body. We want to be pure mind. Pure mind, right? So we want to stay away from anything physical. Now, when we're doing the mantra is internal, it's a vibrational thing, and a mantra is the only thing that can take us from the physical to the enlightened space, to samadhi. It's the only thing that will do it. Why? Because you can do the mantra and you can say it out loud, the vibration of speech. You can then think the mantra, and the mantra goes on. But eventually the mantra disappears. The mantra goes into a pure vibration where it is beyond words, right? And eventually it disappears altogether. It is rising. It is like a thread that draws one up. So, and it does it by itself. It's not that you have to think in terms of reaching those particular things. Over time, it will happen. The mantra becomes just pure vibration. But what it is doing with 2 syllables is it's moving you like this, and that is how Kundalini moves. Kundalini has a vibration to it. It has a rhythm to it. And the mantra hooks in with that rhythm. Right? The speed with which we do it, normally we allow it to pick up its own speed. However, if it is that one is feeling very speeded up, very nervous, very energetic, it's good, you can use it as a device to slow you down mentally. So what you do, you'll find that if you're nervous or energetic, you will have the tendency to do the mantra fast. So by consciously slowing it down, it will slow you down. And your state of mind will be balanced. And that is where meditation in action comes in, because you can be walking down the street and you can suddenly get into this whirlwind of all these thoughts, and you go to the mantra. I am. That'll take you away. And every time you goof off, you come back. Everybody goofs off. Only enlightened people don't goof off, because that's what enlightenment is. There is no goof, it's beyond goofing off. That you are always in the moment. So it is a very powerful exercise to take one into the here and now. The space in which the mantra is, has no boundaries, no limits. It's just a pure samadhi space. We become more and more associated with it. The connotation for us is it is pleasant. It is an enjoyable space. We like being there. The other space is not an enjoyable space. It's a space of problems. It's a space of containment. It's a space of emotion. Right? Now there is this idea that when we get into this space, we lose our feeling, our sensitivity. That's not true. What we do is we still feel, we still have emotion, but non-attached emotion. So we still feel joyous as opposed to happy. We're joyous. And it gives one a more contented view of life. Life has a much better feeling. And through the philosophy, we understand that we're all the same. So whatever we learn, whatever we are, is what the other person is as well. They're just as confused as we are. In Buddhism, it's called ignorance. Not stupidity, but ignorance of how things really are. Right? So what we're trying to do is to live a happier life, a more successful life. Now then we go into this thing, well look, if I kind of let go and let it all hang out, then I'm not in control. So how am I going to get through life if I'm not in control of the events that are going to occur? Well, I've got news for you, you're not in control anyway. None of us are in control, right? Once we start relying on our inner guru, because that's what it is, our consciousness, our inner guru, and we have that confidence that our inner guru is going to guide us in the right direction, we can relax. The problem is we don't have the confidence initially. Now, our inner guru will always be a better guide. Why? Because it is not making decisions on an emotional, attached basis. When we conventionally go through life, what are we doing? We are confirming our prejudices all the time, our predispositions. So just to give you an idea, we have something that we want to do. We go to someone for advice, or several people, and we listen to what they have to say. What do? We accept those that we want to hear, and we reject those that we don't want to hear. So this is an exaggeration, but you get the idea. So consequently, we're never really getting an accurate input in decision making. We're skewing it all the time by what we want it to be. So it's inaccurate. The other way is looking at possibilities, because there are no absolutes. Everything is a possibility and a probability. That's all it is. So when we're in that space of I am, and we have a problem, we can look at that problem in that space of non-attachment, and we can look at all our options, and then we can look at what is the best option. Maybe we're not getting the right answer today. Maybe it'll come tomorrow. Maybe it won't come. But it is starting to look, we are starting to look at our inner guidance system. And that's what we become familiar with. And as we find that that system works and works well, we become more and more confident in it and more reliant on it. And the practice takes us in that direction. And life becomes much more pleasant. With problems, we always think that all our problems are going to manifest immediately now. It's all of them now. In fact, a lot of them go away. Some of them come in a different order. It's never in the way that we think it's going to be, this craziness. And so the practice gives us space. And that's what we all need. And we realize that we're all the same. We all want the same thing. And compassion is a keynote of Tibetan Buddhism. Compassion starts with ourselves. If we cannot be compassionate towards ourselves, then we can't be compassionate to others. Everyone's the same as us. So how can we be compassionate to others and not be compassionate to ourselves? Now, compassion doesn't mean that we just go out there and we give up our hopes, our desires, and all of that for others. That's not what compassion is. It's inner strength, and it is understanding others. Not that they... I think I can give you an example. I'm a real estate developer, believe it or not. And I was having a conversation with somebody who introduced me to a chap who was building a villa. And he was a Swiss guy, and somebody introduced us because we were both Buddhists. So the guy was telling me this story about how he was building this house, and he was a Swiss guy, he was living in Switzerland, and he'd given this money to this German guy, and he kept sending him money. And eventually he came down, and the house hadn't been built, or the money had been stolen. So I said to him, well, what did you do about it? He said, nothing. He says, I'm a Buddhist. I said, but that's not Buddhism. That's bullshit. It's not saying that open my pockets and let everybody help themselves. That's not what Buddhism is. It's inner strength and preventing people doing that sort of stuff. So in other words, and this is where the philosophy comes in, is understanding where other people are coming from, but not letting them take liberties with you any more than you will take liberties with them. So you don't take the liberties with them, but sure as hell you don't let them do it with you either. So there is compassion as a subject, which is hugely important in meditation, and the spiritual path is grossly misunderstood. But we have to have compassion for ourselves. Now, if we come from a Catholic or a Jewish background, it in a way is much harder, because we're taught not really to have compassion for ourselves, because we do something bad and we're going to be punished, right? And that's not a very compassionate way of dealing with it. There are a lot of reasons why, which another time we can talk about, as to why religion is organised the way it is, but we are our own judgment. We know whether we've done right or wrong, and we don't need a priest or a rabbi telling us, or punishing us, or our parents. It's to do with guidance, and what we learn is not to do it again. And if we do it again, we try again, not to do it again. We need to be kind to ourselves. That's what we need to do, and kind to others. But we need to be kind to ourselves. And often we are not. We believe that we need to be punished for things that we've done or should have done, or whatever it is, and that's really not the case. We are all potentially perfect, but misguided. And that's what the practice, it helps us unravel. That we're really not bad people. Nobody is inherently bad. We're misguided. So, any questions? Go.
I've got a question. I've been with the same mantra now for more or less than a year, and I noticed that as I'm saying it, I feel my breath, but at the same time it's like almost like there's different layers, because I'm saying mantra, I'm feeling myself saying mantra, but I'm also at the same time seeing myself, the train of thoughts that I'm at the same time as saying the mantra going into. So it's like I'm thinking at the same time as the mantra is going on. It's almost like there's these two layers going on at the same time. Thought and mantra, and then there will be only mantra, and then only thought, and then back to mantra, and then sometimes at the same time again. Like, how can I be doing it both at the same time?
Well, they can't. I mean, in reality, I think what it sounds like to me is you're moving out of the mantra into the thought. You're probably somewhere between the two.
Yeah.
And you're oscillating between those two spaces.
For sure.
Right? So what you need to do is, when that happens, note it as thinking and come back to the mantra. And I think you'll find that will stop. So you will stay in the mantra.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
You should be staying in the mantra, but it is normal to move out of it. Thinking, it's
So
normal.
when you're saying it's not possible to have your mantra at the same time be in thought, like that's
No. No,
So
you can't be in the two spaces at the same
quick,
time.
like going back and forth, like
Yeah,
that. I'm
You are,
feeling like I'm doing both at the same time.
yeah, but you're not. What you're doing is you're moving between them, right? And in order, so that it is in essence similar to what I was saying before, but you need to separate them. So when that happens, thinking, and go back to the mantra. Every time it doubles up like that, thinking, and go back to the mantra until the mantra is pure. Yeah? Try that and see what happens. I think it'll sort it out for you. All right? Was there someone else back there? No more questions? Okay. Right, so now we can do the practice. Everybody up for that? So we're going to do 5 minutes of pranayama in the way that I mentioned. So remember, the breath, draw it up and draw it down. And as we're doing that, we visualize, it is a visualization, we visualize the ember at the base of the spine, rising to the back of one's head and forward to the center of one's forehead. And we do this up and down for 5 minutes, starting now. The breaths need to be dynamic, really breathe and start on the and breathe out to start. When you, it's always a full breath. And it should be slow. Those of you that know Kalchari Mudra, you can do it at the same time, and you can do the lower bandha as well if you are aware of that. Also, Ujjayi breathing on the out breath. can raise that to 10 minutes. I don't recommend doing more than 10. It's better to just work on the technique, get that very good. If you are advanced, then you can do bandhas. You can do breath retention as well, but these come after. Okay. Now the meditation we'll do for 10 minutes. You can do 20. I mean, you can do the meditation longer. It's usually, from my own experience, it's not really necessary unless you're doing it just for pure enjoyment, to do it for more than 20 minutes. And it is good to time it, the reason being that it should not become an attachment. In other words, if you say it's 10 minutes, do 10 minutes, don't string it out to 15 and get, kind of attached to a whole practice. It's the same thing when sometimes people say they see deities and I don't know what, and that's all fine, but they are reflections of mind. That's all they are. They are minds. And to go off on a tangent and start getting involved with those is a distraction from the object of the path. So as we start getting into this thing about, I've seen the Buddha and all these different incarnations and I'm now into that, you're off the path, you're not on the path. It's fine so long as one sees them as purely what they are, manifestations of mind. There is nothing beyond mind. Alright? Any questions on the practice or anything else? No? Right. Now we'll do the meditation for 10 minutes. Just remember, it's all abdominal. Right? We're going to, the breathing should be as low as possible. Remember, the whole object is that we're minds. There's no real, the reason that we sit in this posture and it's abdominal is because abdominal, when you breathe from the chest, there's always a restriction. The abdomen is unrestricted, and eventually in meditation you'll find that you just will hardly be breathing or not breathing at all, but it's all from here. And we're now going to get firmly in our minds the I am and come back to it. So if we're veering off, we say thinking, and we go back to the I am, and we keep doing that, and we're going to do that for 10 minutes. And I will tell you when the 10 minutes are up. Okay? let's get ready for Yoga Nidra. You don't need a blanket or anything like that. Check that you're all in line, legs slightly apart, arms apart. Palms up. Abdominal breathing. I want you to bring your attention to your toes. Toes, relax. Feet, relax. Ankles, relax. Shins, relax. Knees, relax. Thighs, relax. Now bring your attention to your hips. Hips, relax. Abdomen, relax. Chest, relax. Now bring your attention to your vertebrae. Feel your vertebrae sinking into the floor, one by one. Vertebrae, relax. Fingers, relax. Hands, relax. Wrists, relax. Forearms, relax. Elbows, relax. Upper arms, relax. Now bring your attention to your shoulders. Shoulders, relax. Neck, relax. Throat, relax. you to imagine that it's a nice summer's day. You're sitting on the banks of a stream. It's very slowly passing you by. The stream is clear. You see in it stones protruding from the water as the water slowly drifts by. Some stones are big and some are small. But you see that the water is disturbed and parts to go around the stones. And in those areas, you can't see the depths. You just see disturbed water at the surface. You watch the water go by, going around the stones. Slowly, the water rises and the stones go down deeper and deeper under the water until the surface of the stream is crystal clear. You can see the bottom. It's just clear water. You see the sun reflecting off the surface like a mirror. I want you to remain in that space for a little while until you hear the cymbals, just watching the sun's reflection on the surface of the water. Now I want you to take a deep breath. Move your head from side to side. Move your hands and your feet. And in your own time, come up into seated position. Is that good? Good. Any questions about the practice? Well, then, thank you very much.
Thank you.
We're trying to get a stable group together of people that want to move forward with the practice, the philosophy and also the pranayama practice. So we try to do this once a month, and I hope you will come back.
Thank you.
Thank you.